put this on record to begin. All right. So a pleasant good afternoon again to everyone. Welcome to Caribbean Thought Leadership, the #1 seminar in the Caribbean region to think about the various issues relating to how we solve our own problems, not just because we're in a pandemic, but generally as a part of the Caribbean diaspora concern. I am Sean Thorpe, your host from the School of Computing and Information Technology, Jamaica, at the University of Technology, Jamaica. I'm very pleased this afternoon to have a very, distinguished team of colleagues who spared a few moments of their time this evening to join us. I have in our presence Dr. Arnett Campbell, Senior Lecturer at the School of Computing here at the University of Technology, Jamaica, School of Computing. I have Conrad Madsen, who is, CEO of Pixel Perfect, one of Jamaica's up and rising star companies, anything to do with data, AI, and otherwise. I'm sure he has pivoted his marketing prowess and company's prowess to, be able to solve industry problems, and I do know he's doing well. So I'm really happy that he's able to join us. Gregory Moore, nothing short of excellence as well, pre-incubated here at UTech Jamaica with his company, Playtime, which is now a full incubator company. They deal with esports, anything gaming, and virtual events in particular in the space. I have Linkledln Morley, who I had the benefit of meeting last year, January, in Silicon Valley at his Facebook office before he moved on to Google recently, and introduced me to some of the interesting game engines and pads on the Oculus platform that they had at Facebook. A pleasant welcome to a very important conversation that I'd like to share with you. Just for about an hour or thereabout, depends on how far you would like us to take it. And I have as well here Mr. Tyrone Edwards within the School of Computing and Information Technology here at UTech Jamaica. He is actively working on the Bachelor's of Science in Artificial Intelligence. He has been leading that effort along with my other colleague, Dr. Julian Jarrett, who is leading the game development. Hopefully he'll be able to join. But I think we have a good starting five. A few more persons should join us appropriately at some point in the conversation. But welcome and a pleasant Sunday afternoon to you all. I trust I did the summary okay, but a pleasant good afternoon to you all. I'm testing the mic. Is everyone hearing me?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you very much for agreeing to do this session with us. So let me get right into something very important that I want to share with you. This is a Caribbean Thought Leadership Forum, which was actually created by Dr. Arnett Campbell, who is on this call here with me and myself, just brainstorming. And we're in a pandemic, but the reality check is that life goes on, and thought leadership is something that needs to stand out in times of pandemic and generally otherwise, but more so in a pandemic, within the chaos, we must find order. So this Thought Leadership Forum is one where we're going to look at how Caribbean businesses will need to be building value. So as a sub-theme to this at all times is we look at various sector spaces and see how we're going to generate new value based on what is happening in the space around us. Very important that we capture that highlight, right? So accordingly, what it means is that if new business value is to be created, is either we do the necessary research to appreciate how it should be done and start working on it, just like you're starting up new businesses or new ventures. But, I'm not completely sure that we have all the answers to that. And today we're going to focus on the space of artificial intelligence and game development in particular. Here in the Caribbean, we are now introducing new degree offerings in artificial intelligence and game development. Not limited to the University of Technology where I am, but the other institutions that are, I'm sure, looking at artificial intelligence as a new way forward. And it therefore means that they see something relating to business value. So I'm just going to give a preamble. At our last thought leadership discussion, we started this in April of 2021. It's a good start with a team of us here, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Edward, Dr. Kenroy Wedderburn, who was with us on the last meeting, and Dr. Jarrett. And we were just looking at the larger ecosystem generally of, where exactly is the industry is going. And we had some very lively conversations about various projects we could work on, but we need to put things into context. So we did that brainstorm and an environmental scan of where we could form ideas and get value creation. And coming out of that, we said we will continue this as a series, a development series, which is what I'm following up on. And we'll be converting these sessions into podcasts that more persons in the public can hear what we are talking about. It will also give each of you in your own space a chance to be able to just communicate with a wider public based on the audiences that we have, to listening on what you have to say. So I really appreciate you coming over this afternoon to spend some time with us. Now, I'll give persons a chance to speak in a moment and to just jump right into a conversation, but this preface is just to get us going. Artificial intelligence has become an extremely big play in the last decade at least. When I read the Gallup reports, they are suggesting over the next 5 to 10 years, artificial intelligence will be a major leader. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. By the same extension, the reports for game and game development is showing that, listen, this is also a significant industry, over 250 billion I actually saw in one established article. And we here in the Caribbean, it could be seen as if we are being left behind. And I would want to not think so. So the conversation we're going to have today is as shared on the slide deck before you. And the concept is simple. Do we understand how artificial intelligence and game development can create value? All right, that's one. I will start there and allow everybody around this forum to just share quickly 2 to 3 minutes their thoughts on these things. Then we want to really understand what kind of business problem we really can be solving relating to AI and game development. What kind of business problem can we really be solving as it relates to the areas, right? That you can benefit from, let us say, as companies, or we as individuals in the academia can be supporting to train the public. And just to find suitable use cases by sector for which we think this could be applicable. I do have another slide with some ideas, but before I get to that, I'm going to allow the panel here of talent to just share with us what they think. And then we want to understand the pipeline, the job creation pipeline that needs to really be in place to take talent from short courses or degree programs of study and be able to get them into the sector. I mean, one of the persons on this call, Stephen, called me earlier and said, boy, Sean, we need to find some talent in this particular area, all right? So it's always an ongoing concern to make sure that we are hiring for the talent and the right talent. Then there's a whole space of patents and intellectual property research and public-private sector partnerships called PPP. This is a deck, no more than 1 page, my good friends, right? Gentlemen, all right? This is a deck. I want to get just for about an hour or thereabout some thoughts about where we go with this, and then we'll get the public to come in and weigh in on some of the things that we could be doing as some new project initiatives. So at the end of the day, I think everybody here will be a winner by us having the early conversation. So again, a pleasant good afternoon to you. So probably I should start with Greg. I probably ask Greg to jump in because as a businessman, and then I probably followed by Conrad, to share with us what is the understanding you have in terms of how AI, artificial intelligence, and game development can create value to the markets today. What's the take from where you sit as companies in our local landscape now as to how these create value added to the market?
Okay. All right. No problem. Afternoon again, everybody.
Yes, yes, Greg.
Here.
I hope your mic is stronger because I know the strong answers you give will probably bring new business at the end of the day. So
well,
make sure I have it clear.
If I'm coming in clearly.
Yes, I'm hearing you now. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So as you know, my expertise is within the gaming stuff, video games, virtual reality, etc.
Yes.
And it's something that we've been discussing for quite some time, which is one of the main reasons why we are even in the TIC at this point. But
right.
Going through the pandemic, we a lot of companies have had to pivot, and what we realized is that moving from, I would say, standard or analog systems of the 90s, which most companies use now, they have been forced to move to digital platforms, and the digital platforms really can be what you would say. There's a lack of interactivity, a lack of flair, a lack of and some of them may not even be as interesting for to engage persons online, because once you're online in an online environment, there are a myriad of things that can distract persons. You can be in a Zoom meeting or in some kind of virtual or digital discussion, but then you have the distractions of everything else that's online in a digital format. So you have to be able to engage people pretty much 100% of the time, and this speaks particularly to a younger generation that has an appreciation for digital technology. And gamification is one of the primary ways in which businesses or corporations can enhance the ways in which they interact with their clients, or new persons that they're seeking to come on board or seeking to engage. And direct game development, or the game development industry is quite saturated at this point in time. And it is not that we are saying that persons should not try to build a video game or an interactive game to try and get it sold, on a game console or on a computer. But what I'm really saying is that gamifying corporate offerings is a big deal now.
It's a big deal. All right.
Exactly.
Excellent.
How do I say, for instance, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, they had contacted us to find a way how can they make the idea of trading and investing appealing to a younger generation, and they're thinking about how can it be gamified. So it's not that you're building a video game to just go and set a high score or whatever. You're building an interactive platform or application that has a sense of purpose. In this case, bringing interest or making investing in the stock market appealing, and that goes for pretty
excellent much. Excellent point, Gregory, and thank you for coming. So I want to get all the person on the call here in on a point there. You just made an important point. The traditional game development engines, as we know them, might be such that you might be tapping off in the market segment somewhat, and you have to now pivot. And the example you just gave us how you're able to pivot with the Jamaica Stock Exchange, in terms of providing services to them. Sound like a creation of value strategy right there. But I want to come back to you, and I'm going to ask Conal at this point to Wayne. Let me hear his viewpoint. I know as a man who is big on data sciences, but AI forms some element of how that probably can drive the business. What is your take on all this?
Thanks, Sean. I think I have a similar sentiment. I think the conversation around the pandemic has really driven a total new mindset in Jamaican companies over the last couple of months or over a year.
Yes,
right, over a year, because what has happened now is that traditional business models have certainly become disrupted based on what's happening. Look at every company now has to go into some form of delivery, where delivery was never a business model of most Jamaican companies. Coming to the store was the business model. And now when you deliver stuff here, customers want information on the go, which is what they want. Is the package ready?
Yes.
Where is the package? What time is the package coming? Was it delivered, and what time it was delivered? And things like those are things that we have been using. We have been looking into to see, okay, how can we partner with Jamaican companies to use some form of AI to give the customer that kind of information, meaning pulling from some form of database, and can help them to, at least with basic AI, to kind of guide that process instead of that information we manually inputted to the customer, right? So there is business models there. And then from that, as you said, on my side, is to use the data now and the insight to make better delivery service to the customer. So at the end of the day, it's an ecosystem where AI can support companies. I use another example is that customers now are texting companies more than they're calling companies, because of this new WhatsApp mindset customer. Right? And as a result, AI can also help with that, because some of the questions that they possibly may ask are rather basic, like what time you guys open? Are you guys going to be open on Sunday when the curfew is 2 o'clock? And you don't need a customer care agent to do that at 3 a.m. in the morning. You could have an AI to do those basic things, and say if you want a full agent,
or some other
right,
service.
a chatbot, right, and then a chatbot could manage the conversation overnight till 8 o'clock in the morning. An agent continues that conversation. So the conversation now is not that the technology is not here, or the thought process of the technology is there. I would just skip down to your fourth point on the discussion, is that do we have the pipeline of talent to maintain and develop this kind of thing? And then the next part about this becoming a podcast is to also change the mindset of Jamaican companies or Caribbean companies to say that this is an efficient service that you will benefit from in the future. Right? So it's building the business model for the customer of the future, and not necessarily building the business model.
That point, building the business model for the future. I love how you guys presenting this thing. I know you guys have a lot of ideas, and traditional companies are dying and new companies are forming, and existing companies that pivot like yours, your two companies, is what is creating value. So I'm going around the table, so to speak, and just to get everybody's input into the conversation. I'm going to go to Linkledln next. So Linkledln is at Google, but Linkledln is involved in lots of Jamaican projects with the diaspora, the Jamaica diaspora, and well as the JCS, Jamaica Computer Society, Silicon Valley chapter. What's your take, sir? Because as a technology professional yourself with years of industry experience, what is this value creation argument we are talking about that you think we either missed the boat or we're on the same point?
I think Linkledln dropped,
Linkledln dropped?
Yeah, not seeing him.
Okay, all right, Linkledln dropped. So probably I'll get him back shortly. So I'm going to defer then to Dr. Campbell and then Mr. Edwards just to weigh in on their views.
Tyrone, I'll come last.
You'll come last. All right, Sir Campbell. So, Sir Edwards.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And one of the points that Conrad raised, Professor Thorpe, which is very one that even I have as a concern for businesses that are currently offering services that are considered to be 24-hour services, or that 24/7, 44/8 type service. Yet still, their mode of operation restricts any form of interaction with their customers once you pass 5 o'clock, cut off. The pandemic has provided that opportunity for these businesses to now capitalize on what is possible by infusing artificial intelligence and gamification into their customer service products.
Yes.
Right. And it is good that Conrad pointed this particular concern, this particular opportunity, because for let's take a company like a Flow or a Digicel, right, or even the bank that says go online to carry out, to conduct your businesses. They did not say go online between the hours of 8:30 to 2:30, Monday to Thursday, and then on Friday up to 4. They didn't say that. They said conduct transactions from the comfort of your home.
Right. Assuming that you have that from the comfort of your home, but all right, it's a fair point.
Yes, but yet still, their customer service, when you dial in, you get that pre-recorded message. Customer service is not available is available between the hours of 8:30 to 5.
Okay, so you bring a very interesting spin to the discussion. The previous two speakers, that's Greg and Carl, point out the clear productivity gains to pivot. There's also some level of productivity loss by way of the same pivot. Is that a correct interpretation to what you're saying? Because we can adopt technologies, but at the same time, we must be mindful that you could have some productivity loss, because in a pandemic, which is where we are, right? People still have to function remotely. They have to go home. They have to pick up things at the supermarket. So whatever national curfew submissions are in, we have to all abide by them. Even though we're doing this session, we are actually beyond curfew time doing it. All right, so that's a very useful point.
So yes. It's in the pivot, you should be seeking to make this productivity loss a gain, so that the AI and the gamification will now step in where the human, the customer service agent is not able to be not available to provide the services.
Provide that service, yes.
And in the Caribbean, we should now be looking at how we are able to create these services for our own businesses, such that we do not end up being the last person trying to hop onto the cart.
Yes, indeed.
And we should be using the current environment to gain that positional advantage, where everyone is now looking for a way to remain functional, to remain productive.
Excellent.
And this is where we should be banking on the features available through the use of artificial intelligence. And this, and to reach the younger stakeholders, the younger generation, which are into the WhatsApp, the social networking, and the very many social applications that are available, so that we can now engage these stakeholders.
Okay, fair enough, Sir Edward. Dr. Campbell, what is your take on the creation of value you know, economic, social, you know, whatever the values we are seeing, you know. So I took the two arguments just now about productivity gains and productivity losses by seeking value. But what's your take, Dr. Campbell, on where we're heading in this particular space?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Go back to the whole idea of thought leadership. And I remember reading sometime in the near past that real thought leaders or thought leadership tends to be disruptive, and what they talk about is uncomfortable. People don't, when they talk about these things, people are not comfortable with what they are suggesting. We see the disruption brought about by the pandemic, and even before the pandemic, you and I have been talking about the digitization, the cloud and data strategies that are converging, and the need to create this technology roadmap for it, because it is going to dictate where we go for the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm seeing where business leaders are facing a lot of challenges brought about by these disruptions. And they're asking us, how do we make sense of these disruptions? And how do we identify what's going on, and how do we create value out of all of that? So if we look at, for example, a problem that we're looking at right now with vaccination. Some persons are taking vaccination and some are not taking vaccination, and the need to relax the restrictions, and how that is going to conflict with in some countries where people have rights to assemble and do all kinds of things. How will you do business safely in that kind of environment? So business is going to turn to you as a thought leader and ask you, how do we now find technological solutions to help us to
solve that? Yes.
To solve this problem of identifying and creating bubbles that persons can operate safely, to identify people who have made a sacrifice to be vaccinated, for example, and be able to enjoy the freedom of the sacrifice they have made, and at the same time don't necessarily restrict those who have decided that, you know, whether for against science or following the what do you call it now? Trying to find the word, man. The conspiracy theories, following the conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, all kind of conspiracy theories. So again, what you're saying, this is impacting the productivity levels.
Right. So I'm seeing here, as we look to AI, since we're talking about AI as our focus point for the Caribbean here, how do we now use AI to respond to these challenges?
Yes.
That are going to be asked of us, of business leaders in our local space.
So this is a pivotal point. But earlier in the call, I took Gregory's point about, listen, nice opportunity to pivot. I know both of those companies hinge between events, marketing, but they are leveraging the technology locally to change the space and to create new added outcomes to the space or value to the space using AI and game development strategies. So it's a very useful point. Tyrone came in with the issue of the productivity gains and the productivity loss within a pandemic. And you, Dr. Campbell, highlight, in a very clear way that, well, the thought leadership, that the man or the woman behind the technology must have a clear grasp of how they are going to use these resources or these toolkits of AI and game development to build that value. Well, you move into a very important part of the conversation, because the thought leadership necessary to do it will mean that those persons also understand it. And then it leads to an interesting point, which I'm going to now defer to here, as understanding the business problems that we can solve with AI and game development. So it's one thing to learn the technology, one thing for a School of Computing and Information Technology at UTech. As we introduce these degrees, we got the approval so far to introduce them, but at the same time, the long-term sustainability must be measured by having interesting business problems that we want to solve, right? Interesting business problems that we want to solve. So I open back the floor to Greg, followed by Connor, to say, well, all right, you guys are running your companies now, and you know, AI and game development are here and probably here to stay based on the global market and the kind of income that can be generated from it. We here in the Caribbean now, and in particular Jamaica, where we are running the session from right now, what are some of the underlying business problems you see that we could start working on, or we should be working on, or better yet, you have been working on, because your companies, you have been working on, that, you know, as a society, we need to be paying more attention to. Let me get some insights, and probably start with Conrad first, and then followed by Greg in this order, to get some views here. Welcome, Stanford, to the call. Welcome. I think that's Miss Leslie joining the call. Thank you for coming. Go ahead, Conrad, if you're still there.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I would say that there are many problems we have seen in the AI space. It's even so wide now that we are even trying to focus to get some market penetration, or have some level of expertise to say, okay, we are very good at this area of strength. But we'll start with one of the easiest one, I spoke about it before, is the chatbot space, which is the business problem that tries to fix is customer service, customer experience. That's one that we have significantly fixed, and we even use it in the recent times for events. So looking at champs that is coming up in about 10 days.
And girls champs coming up,
and nobody is going to be there. We have built a chatbot. We have built a chatbot called ChampSpot that will give parents the opportunity.
So repeat that for me again, Connor. It's called what?
ChampSpot. ChampSpot, right? Which you can go to ChampSpot. It's gonna be on WhatsApp, Facebook, and a website itself, which should be an AI totally, which will be just giving parents, people from the diaspora, data about either a person that ran a race or a school. So you just type in Mark James, he's in 100 meters, and it will tell you how it was placed. So it's pulling from a database throughout all of that.
Company is doing that. Your company is doing that.
We are currently doing that. Yeah, we did it before. We did it before. We did it before.
Is doing that. Yes.
Right, we did it before 2 years ago. 2019 was the last version of it when we actually had a live event. We didn't do it last year because the event didn't happen. So this year we're pulling it back up. Hopefully, we got some slow development on that because we also wanted some voice activation for us to say, well, go on in the race and give people voice activation using the AWS
platform
system. Yeah, right. So with integration with AWS system and some other AI products that they have there. So
he's talking about, ladies and gentlemen, Amazon's products, right? Amazon's AWS products.
Amazon products, right. So I'm saying there are opportunities there in the event space, which we have now tried. There's opportunities in the customer service space. And I've also seen where people are doing it. There are some AI for some business processes that can give quicker information and data access points that they can give the AI the opportunity to look through, train it in some way to look out for some form of risk or look for certain kind of things. But these are things that we're actively working on in our company. So it's not something we have done formally for brands, but we are using the AI for internal business processes to see how best it can give us some greater insights into the company. So I'm just saying, for me, I'm just speaking about what I have done and areas that I've seen low-hanging fruits, right? Right. These are low-hanging fruits. We have seen areas where we know when you go overseas, you'll see people standing in their house and say, hey, Amazon, could you deliver, Alexa, could you deliver 2 boxes of milk to me? And, and a day later, you see the box of milk delivered at home. What's going to happen to the Jamaican businesses when we reach advanced stages where Jamaicans can do that to Alexa and it delivers to Jamaica?
You just create a nice new problem, boss. That boy, I don't think we're spending enough time dealing with. Excellent point you made there. So you're saying AI in Jamaica, as it is now, its adoption is really through things like a robotic process automation, where we have these chatbot automated services being used in events management and customer service operation as 2 problem spaces for which we can engage.
Simple. Those are the simple ones, but I'm just giving you an option I'm just giving you ones where Amazon, where Alexa could disrupt the entire business space if Amazon if we can use voice activated AI to order what we want from our rooms, and it gets delivered right here to Jamaica, then what happens to our H&L? What happens to our Grace Kennedy?
What happens to DHL and all? So you're saying
what happened to the people right here? They could go out of business significantly if Amazon can deliver from. Yes, you kind of say using words and it delivers to your home in Jamaica. Yes. What would happen to the Jamaican localized businesses? So we have to start thinking of AI for those kind of problems. It's not here. We are 2, 3 years, 4 years behind the world. But if we start working on it, why now, 2020?
3, 4 years behind, you said, okay.
Right, in the world, because there are people in Jamaica that I believe still see it as quickly as the world is seeing it. Maybe we don't have the infrastructure. And why I love this conversation, as our lecturers are on this call, the partnerships that need to happen is the businesses and the university partnering.
The businesses and the university partnering.
For this to work. Yes. For this to work. Well, let me show you an example. When I went to China to do my data science course, you would realize that there's a particular AI that they were working on at the university, or a student was working on, but they saw it as an opportunity to partner with Alibaba. Yes. So now Alibaba paid for the course, and all the top students who came out of that course went directly into Alibaba, because Alibaba, that problem was in Alibaba, but they couldn't, that problem was in Alibaba. So even though the theory was good, it wasn't going anywhere.
Yes.
So the university had to reach out to Alibaba to say, we see this data problem in your company.
Yes.
Here, what you do. You don't have to pay for the research. I want you to sponsor the course.
Yes.
And sponsor some of the students, because it's going to be expensive. So they subsidize the course as a business partnership. And the university and the entity sees this as a pipeline opportunity to fix a business problem, provide talent, and then the connection works best for both of them. So instead of us doing 1 million people doing psychology, word speaking in the less do less psychology. I'm not saying anything about psychology, but less and say AI is the future.
Yes.
But AI is the future. Let me get X company, Y company to come in and sponsor this course as a pipeline to bring in this product to the market in 2 years, and we are becoming the #1 player, instead of just creating students and they have nowhere to go.
And you have nowhere to go. That is, this is the basis of this particular discussion this afternoon, because as the university and the industry have this conversation, we provide and we supply the demand of what the industry is asking for. So the questions that we are putting forward here, or we are positing, must really treat with the fact that we are trying to solve business problems which are relevant, pandemic, post-pandemic. So I really thank you for that input so far. I will come back to you in a few as we elaborate and elucidate the points. So Greg, from where you sit, and you probably might be more saying on the game and game development side, what are the business problems we should be working on?
All right, well, I just have maybe just two things to say quickly about what Conrad's discussion was before I move into my part. But it really shows an indication that the universities also need to pivot and create.
I'm not limiting it to UTech now. I say universities.
No, just the universities, because we need to be able to have some serious think tanks out here that are, you know, coming up with these kind of solutions with key business areas in mind. And, you know, so that's a discussion that needs to be had in terms of, you know, having think tanks that, you know, functional think tanks to solve some of these problems. Secondly, as Conrad mentioned, we're about 2 to 3 years from that. It is pretty an accurate statement, because right now Amazon is establishing a massive warehouse on the port. So in a very short order, that's your favorite word, Dr. Tharp, very short order, these systems can come in place once Amazon is fully established.
So where are they establishing that port you said?
Kingston Wharves is
I want everybody to hear that. You're saying down in Kingston Wharves, Amazon will be in there shortly. So all right. Point well made. Continue.
Yeah, but anyways, moving on to my side, you know, so one of the main areas that we are engaged in now is so the Jamaican Heritage, right, is a big topic of discussion for Ministry of Gender and Sports.
Gender and Sports, yes.
So what we are doing now we are trying to preserve Jamaican heritage, you know, to be able to showcase our artifacts, our museums and everything. Because of pandemic, our museums are not really earning.
Yes, that is so true. That is so true.
So over the past few months, we've been having several meetings with various stakeholders within the heritage space, Heritage Trust, Institute of Jamaica, etc. So we're going to be embarking on preserving. It's probably like a 3 to 4 year thing, but for now we have already identified a handful of sites that we'll be putting into full virtual reality. So we'll be having virtual museums to be able to not only preserve
to a tourism market, for example. Okay.
So persons will be able to visit Jamaica's museums and have a full interactive experience virtually. And you know, that will be applied to edutech as well. So, you know, bringing off education, because the thing is, even when I was in school, some of the things that I've learned just by doing site visits for the purpose of creating quotations, I had complete history lessons during these site visits, and I'm like, why is it that these things are not in our schools? So the virtual reality will also be adapted within the schools.
Can I say something?
We have hundreds of thousands. Go ahead.
Yeah, 5 years ago, Henry Rainford from the JLA and the whole history with Jamaica's farming and going back to Jamaica Hope, I got all of that collection from them, and I brought it to UTech for it to be digitized and for us to create a digital museum out of it. And we never got the support at all. And then my absence from UTech, I don't even know what has happened to a lot of those valuable artifacts that we collected, and it had lots of implications for not only industry and the whole development of farming and the JLA, but UTech dropped the ball there.
Right. So
well, I would say look at it this way now. Many companies have received proposals or ways in which to implement digital strategies and solutions way before the pandemic hit. So now that the pandemic is here, we don't really have much of a choice. We'll have to do
choice. So no choice. So it's a well-made point.
That is what's happening now. So, you know, they have hundreds of thousands of artifacts stored up in boxes and underground
right,
and in
right. So it needs to be digitized. It needs to be digitized.
So we're going through embarking on a massive scanning
campaign. Yes.
And all of these things so people can see them online.
So your company is working on these projects. I mean, they approach you.
Right. So as a leader in virtual reality, naturally,
yes,
we are approached when it comes to these type of things. So the full thing will be utilized. It will be phased implementation because it's so much content, over the span of a few years. But at least by the end of this year, we will have the first stage of the platform up for testing, So
okay. So I'm really thank both of you so far for those points. We're gonna move to Mr. Edwards next, if that's the same order, then Dr. Campbell. But so far from what you're suggesting, both, there's been the dislocation of the traditional business sector in of itself is creating new opportunities, new problems that now need to be solved. So what traditionally was a manual business is now needs to become a digital business. Otherwise, it will have no future existence. That's a short version. So it depends on the companies who are already in this space and willing to jump to it, like your companies, that will be first movers to seize the opportunity. So let me move back to the academics, which is ourselves, and probably ask Mr. Edwards and then Dr. Campbell from where they sit as to a perspective on how they see the business problems. I took careful note as well of what Conrad had said earlier in terms of the partnerships needed between the institutions to help solve these business problems. But let me hear from Mr. Edwards first as to his take, and then Dr. Campbell accordingly.
Thank you again for the invite. In the space where the academics reside,
yes,
we seek to enlarge the pool of trained individuals who will be able to solve the problems that the businesses have. And for the most part, we have been focusing on providing graduates with the set of skills that are generally in demand. We have taken on, in some instances, specialized type of training opportunities through offering short courses geared towards specific needs of some businesses. And at UTech, and I'm sure that Dr. Campbell remembers, and as he spearheaded the launch of SAPNA, which has taken on several
industry
problems
projects.
that are industry-related projects. And we have seen the outcome where the graduates that participate in that particular program are hired before they reach the point of graduation. So it's not the case where, as academics, we are not aware of the benefits that can be gained by joining forces with the business community. What I see as a challenge in most cases are the hurdles, the internal bureaucracy that sometimes impedes the attempts at trying to make these types of partnerships.
Partnerships
and
happen.
so
Okay.
and so yes, so we have to grow that type of environment such that internal bureaucracies do not impede the ability for a company to approach a university and say, this is our specific need. And as Conrad said in the Alibaba case,
yes,
they sponsor first students who are interested.
yes.
I step back to think when the GOJ, the government of Jamaica said, we are looking through the SLB to give students who seek to take on STEM-related
Yeah, that's
studies
a very strong point there.
a priority
Yes.
in being approved.
Yes.
And so from the level of the GOJ making such a stance, we would expect that it is an indication that if there are opportunities to be gained in terms of being able to provide training in these areas, that overall the administration of our universities will jump at the opportunity to provide such.
I want to chime in a little bit there.
Yes, thank you very much. That's an excellent point. So Dr. Campbell, yes, please
before
right away.
Yeah, quick. No, before Dr. Campbell come in, I want to just Conrad here. Yeah, I just want to say a quick point.
Yes.
But the transformation at the university would have to come in there. So I have had my concerns as the players that see that. Here what will need to happen. There needs to be a function. And this is me because part of my business about the marketing function. It always begs to question that universities don't sell these concepts very well, you know. It's who knows about these things will know, but if you don't know, this won't happen. I'm saying if the university, so the university, if they say to themselves, let me put a website up for students who are in high school or in college that said to themselves that they want to go into STEM. And then UTech can say, well, if we go through this approval process and you get through, we'll send your names down to SLB for you.
Yes.
Right? If you understand the point. So it can be a proactive way, you know. Yeah, it could be the other way around instead of, let you apply to SLB and tell them that you want to do this and then they approve. What do you can say? Look, I have 150 students, I have 200 students that are applying to STEM courses through us, right, in the last year. And they all based on a couple of questions. This is me putting on a hat of the data science, based on a couple of data points that we have asked them. All of them say they need funding. So we are just taking advantage of what the government has said. And then you can send a message to the government to say, see it here as well, we're supporting your thing as well to push this forward. So what has to happen now is that these kind of conversations need to continue to happen so that they can be built out and not just known, if you understand. So yes, there's an element to it that we must, yes, the government has made a step. So policy is in place.
Yes.
However, function won't happen with policy only.
Yes.
Understand? So policy won't have enough function legs to make this happen. So we'd have to make sure that we are saying, companies, if you want a project like this or that, here is a landing page on your website, on the UTech site, where there's a university corporate partnership where you can apply and tell us your function and your problems, whatever, and then put somebody in charge of that. And then you're the funnel, then a little man or a big company can say, okay, there is a function, there is a unit, there is a platform that I can go to with my little problem. Send it to UTech, and somebody will reach out to me to start a discussion around that, instead of it being a little small group. So those are two opportunities coming out of a conversation there.
This is an extremely beautiful conversation we're having so far. So both you and Mr. Edwards saying, listen, the university needs to become more nimble. Tyrone made a point earlier, listen, we have smaller agencies in the university like SAPNA, which really is our equivalent of a Google-like platform to transform youngsters into the talent to meet the needs of the urgent market to solve some very specific and urgent business problems. You are saying, Conrad, so far, listen, if the university literally leverages, just like what Mr. Edwards was saying, you both are saying it, leverage the STEM-based provisions in the Student Loan Bureau, we can actually bulk up the kind of talent force, if we're going to come to talent pipeline a bit. But to solve those problems that now might present themselves at scale, then the university being a first mover to keep doing those things, then it will make the difference going forward as to how well we can pivot on solving problems. I agree, but I'm going to also advocate, as I move to Dr. Campbell, that it probably might be the very nimble agencies in the university, like the equivalent of the SAPNA that Dr. Campbell I know used to lead, and I now have oversight for it. It is agencies like those in the university system that might have to be the first movers to make the big change. But I take the point from you also far. Dr. Campbell, you have the last word on this point.
Well, I would say that listening to all these valuable contributions,
yes,
that what we see, and I'm an advocate of it, that where challenges exist in the university, the way to deal with it is that we have to be disruptive in terms of how we shape policies from within the faculties and schools and make things happen. So
yes,
so where the structures don't fit what we want to do, we have to create structures. So you remember that when I was leading the school, we didn't have a structure for graduate, and I created it.
Yes.
And just placed it before the dean and said, this is it. And they adopted it. And so a lot of the structures, we didn't have a way of managing our resources. And Stanford came to me and said, look, let's do a special accounts committee. And he drafted the policy for that, right? And I said, let's run with it. Right, and we created
it comes back down to the thought leadership. It comes back down to the leadership.
Exactly. So we created an environment back then, and we continue where thought leaders start to develop, and I think that we can accelerate that to be even better at it, where we are now partnering with industry. So I see that we should be researching what we are teaching and teaching what we are researching.
Yes.
So the whole idea is, and I take what Conrad said,
yes.
There are lots of things that we are learning from our space. So I came back into this space this year, and I have a whole lot of data that I captured from my LMS, because I push out a lot of discussion. I have the students talking and doing a lot of stuff. So right now, one of my tasks for the summer is to do a lot of mining of those discussions, to see what I'm learning from the students and to feed that back into how we design and develop content for future offerings. So I'm seeing, new approaches, new ways that we are teaching, and it is helping. I remember when we started out, for example, this semester, students were complaining about how many pieces of assessment that I was going to give them, and I ended up giving them, I would say, 20-something pieces of assessment for the course called Software Engineering Analysis and Design. First in the history that they got so many pieces of assessment and engagement. And some of the students who were complaining at the beginning were writing and asking, sir, which course you're going to be teaching next?
Just for them to learn more of solving business problems, you give them more assessments.
Exactly.
Yes, I see the point.
So you start teaching them how to look and engage and look for problems, identify gaps there, and how to critique each other's work. And so they start telling me, oh, sir, I'm taking this technique and I'm applying it to this course and that course. So I'm saying it's a movement. And
so excellent point, Dr. Campbell, excellent. And based on that point, in terms of readying the graduates to take on Connaught's problem, let us argue that Connaught is the Alibaba of China in Jamaica. For a moment. He and Greg decide to be the Alibabas. The argument could be that for companies like theirs, because the fact that you are seeing the vision, gentlemen, in terms of how to move some of these things forward, this very conversation that we may be having is to move it to a use case, to move it to a use case that we take a pipeline of the talent coming out of our existing programs, plus the new AI and game development that is coming, to move them into some of the immediate problem spaces from year one in their programs of study.
Just add one thing here, Professor.
Yes.
The whole idea of participation, where students think that they just come and do a little presentation, chat away as a presentation. I changed all of that this time. So they have to come to lecture to participate, and any time within the lecture, they get a pop-up question, and they have to answer those questions. And I'm collecting all of those through the Zoom chats, and all of those come into a CBS file to me, and then bam, I put my algorithm on top of that, and I'm generating their participation grades. Boom, out of that, their participation grades.
So this has been a very beautiful discussion so far, Dr. Campbell and team. As a matter of fact, leaving the point, what I would like to ask our presenters who are sharing here so far, I said Connaught and Greg in particular, the issue of solving business problems. I'm leaving you that charge on the point. You see, some of those problems you currently have now in your company that need to be solved, send them over to the School of Computing as some potential problem spaces that we should start engaging on from now. So the students can be a part of that immediate pipeline. But we'll get to the argument of the pipeline. So I'll leave you on that chat. There's a lot of opportunity on the problem space. Feel like we should have had a whole forum around it by itself. So if we then take it from your perspective that events, customer services, talking about the tourism sector, probably other sectors as well, for which business problems could be aligned. What are you seeing out of your crystal ball or in immediate situations, gentlemen, are the use case reference points, for how specifically, AI and game development can be adopted by sector? So probably I might say events is one, but that might be big on the tourism, or it could be manufacture, could be, it could be on the security. Give me a sense of where you see the landscape of where the use cases should be coming from, or they are coming from, to use AI and game development specifically.
Well, I think it's the same. My same points of
the same points.
My same points with the starting points, because if the areas of which I would say are future, are areas that we have looked at for the future. If the students are not even there yet, it's difficult for us to get to that new level. But if we can get to basic, AI is not just coding or the computing part. AI takes in a data component.
It takes in
so every time we do
big time.
So every time when we finish school, everybody wants to be a data science for the bank.
So okay, excellent point. So everything is data driven. So, everything is data driven then, Connaught. Everything is data driven. Every sector will be affected.
Every sector will be affected.
Every sector will be affected.
So we don't know, there's no data, there's no AI. So when people talk about AI, they're looking at AI as a sector all by itself in a computing sense.
Like that. So you are advocating for a ministry of AI and game development? Is that something?
Yes, man. It's something. It without question. There's no way Jamaica will be. Without question, Jamaica needs a digital transformation of nation.
Yes.
You understand? We're not talking about digital transformation of companies. We are talking about a movement.
Yes,
right?
A movement.
We're talking about a movement that needs to happen across all things.
That one,
right?
definitely.
We are looking at what do you know, like when we were starting in the 60s and we got independence, and at that time there was a mission of what we were going to become. And then there's a 2030 plan that we all hear that is going to become something. What is that? What is that? What does that digital future look like for us?
9 years away from it, and probably it's not more clear than it was 10 years ago.
10 years ago when it was developed. So what we're saying now is let's pull it back to the table now, and so we have about 8 more years after this year.
Roughly.
Ask ourselves, is it the same future that we saw 20 years ago?
That's a good
point. Or should we pivot now?
We need to pivot
urgently. Does the 2030 plan need to change for the future that we need to see? And I think it's going to be one of the biggest points.
The original plan was the 2020 plan, you know.
Yes, and then they switch to 30.
2020, and then they move it to 30.
And the plan to 30. And I would say, as a person who have to sit on two sides of the conversation now, and it has brought me great experience, that I've been on the side of the marketing and sit in some meetings for the government. And I always sit down and ask them, what is this 2030 plan? Because I don't know it. You see, Jamaica, no problem is something I know very well. And the national anthem and the pledge, but I don't know the plan. You understand? So I know my pledge and I know my anthem, but I don't know the plan. And that's like a man. Yes, it's a very important point that, you know, we, the Masons of Jamaica, because we are the Masons, we are going to be the persons building Jamaica.
Definitely.
What has the architect? The architect has not communicated clearly what we are going to build. And as a result, we will build anything. And that is my greatest concern at the moment.
A very great concern. It's a very great concern, and it really underscores the point very, very, very well. So to talk about sector development for AI and game development, boy, so far without even listening to any of the other presenters say anything, Conrad is actually advocating a Ministry of AI and Game Development, which I fully endorse, is actually an indicator of where the transformation should go, because we do have government talking about ICT authorities, we do have government talking about identity needs and its identity authority, data commission, but none of those have yet made one as it relates to how the data transformation initiatives that will drive them, right? Using both the AI and in some elements of the game development to be a part of it. Fully support that. But let me hear from the rest of the panel. Greg, you're up next. Mrs. Delisa, thank you for joining. I think I see you as the only lady here on the call, second lady on the call, I should say rather. But I see she's on mute at the moment. Thank you for coming. So gentlemen, so far, who was next? Greg, you had a view?
Yeah, man, I'm here. So, yeah, man, very powerful statements from Conrad.
Yeah, man, very. I'm going to nominate him for Minister of AI. I'm going to nominate him for Minister of AI and Game Development. And here comes Trevor Forrest, who actually was a special advisor in the ministry. Ministry of AI and Game Development. That's what you need. You don't need an ICT authority and Office of Data Commission, and all of that should fall under the Ministry of AI and Game Development. Mr. Forrest, you joined just in time in a riveting discussion about where the sector should be going. So I'm glad you joined the call. Thank you for coming. Conrad was just here stirring it up a bit. But Greg, back to you, and I'll eventually give Mr. Forrest the last word on this one, actually, if he gets a chance. But go ahead, Greg.
So from our perspective, especially when it comes to virtual reality, and back again to game development, there is a very narrow perspective placed on both of them. People
too really, narrow. Okay.
Very narrow. People really always liken those two topics towards the entertainment sector.
Yes.
Even in what we do when it comes to esports, they try to push esports into entertainment and not realizing that something as esports and video games is the basis of which many ICT entities have been formed. People were playing games first before they came out with their wonderful ideas. when it comes to IT. And even from a perspective of cybersecurity, it is recommended from Israel that gamers form the basis of a lot of what the work needs to be the work that we need to get done in cybersecurity, which, you know, that's another task.
Which is another space by itself. We're going to have a discussion on that tomorrow afternoon with cybersecurity. I might have to send you an invite to it.
But virtual reality and game development, every sector, once there's an issue, especially during the pandemic and post-pandemic, because people are spending millions of dollars to pivot their business. They're not just going to erase all of that or remove all of that infrastructure change when the pandemic has been resolved. They're going to continue because they're experiencing a lot of cost saving at this moment. So gamification can be applied to everything. Virtual reality can be applied to everything. Education, sports, you know, every sector, you know, the IT infrastructures, business processes, everything, you know. We're doing something now with the business processes sector, which is the BPO sector. And it involves gamification and virtual reality.
On the BPO.
Exactly.
Yes,
so you know, we need to be able to communicate that it's not for you to know, put on something, run up and down and scream and have fun. This allows you, especially for the production sector, manufacturing. They're using AR and VR to be able to detect things, detect issues, understand how things have been built and constructed. You know, simply put, an example with like the National Water Commission. You can use augmented reality or virtual reality to map every single pipeline in Jamaica. So you're not randomly digging up spaces to try and find things. You're not randomly breaking infrastructure for repairs.
Yes, these are some very good examples you're giving, you know, yes.
It can go on forever because if you name a problem, there is a virtual solution.
There's a turnaround point for it. Excellent.
We just need to broaden the scope. I would really love to be able to take on every problem, but it's not going to happen. Me alone.
Exactly.
There is a solution from VR, AR, AI, data. There is a solution for every issue using those components. You know?
And your companies in particular, you know, have been doing an extremely good job in taking on the pivot and being a part of the income earnings. I'm quite aware of that in terms of how you use AI and game development so far to drive, you know, the need for what should be happening in the space. So the pandemic, although it is really a challenge, is in fact creating some very unique opportunities. And I'm picking up that so far from this very interesting discussion. Remember, this discussion we are having actually is a convertible podcast that is to be posted and to get other public views into the conversation. So I really like what I've been hearing so far, and to thank Conrad and Greg for those comments related. So I'm going to move to Tyrone, then back to Dr. Campbell, and then to have, I'm now noticing that Mr. Trevor Forrest as well as Mr. Paul, Sherlon Paul, have been able to grace us with their presence. And I would like to thank them both for us joining in onto this conversation. It's going to be a very large national public conversation when we are done, gentlemen, based on what we're doing now, because we'll be putting this out in our cyber communities for getting public input to the conversation and to document and do some next steps. So I really thank you both for coming. So Tyrone, you had a view from the academic standpoint about the sectors. Heard Conrad and Greg quite eloquently saying, well, listen, it affects every sector, and Greg pointing out some very specific use cases. But is there a view from yourself, followed by Dr. Campbell, on where this can be going?
Well, thanks again for
Are you defer to the industry? Are you defer to the industry to accept their use cases?
Well, what I can say is those use cases are definitely valid use cases. And I was going to draw back on a bit of history that said when academics were not teaching
Yes.
They were the ones out there doing the work.
They were the ones,
right? So there is a point, there is a point in time when the universities were not doing the academic work only, but they were out there leading what was happening in industry.
So we need to reclaim that. That's what you're saying. We need to reclaim that. Yes. Well,
yes, so we must be involved in what takes place in industry. And as Greg said it, sorry, Conrad said it, and Greg also said it, without data, we would not be having any form of discussion now. When it was realized that a competitive advantage could be gained by being able to mine, to get insights from the data, the vast amount of data that has been captured by these different companies. That is when the push came. Give us more tools that allow us to gain these insights. Give us more tools to make us more competitive. And academic responded by doing the research, finding the examples and counter examples to say these different techniques can give us the advantages that we're looking for and allow us to develop the tools. And it is from these that then the businesses were able to now build out their own proprietary systems.
Indeed.
So all the use cases that Conrad and Gregory have put forward are very true use cases. Yes, and we can think of many more use cases. I think about the problem where students doing CSEC and CAPE, especially in the technical areas, they could benefit from virtual reality lab space. Space that allows them to carry out their experiments, for example, in chemistry, in biology, where they have to dissect an animal, put that in a virtual lab so that they can participate in that type of experience.
In terms of the education, yes. Yeah. So it's a lot of work you're saying that can be created right now, a lot of value-added work by us pivoting in many of the existing sectors. And as you are all articulating quite well, every sector is a data-driven sector for which AI and game development can apply. That's what I'm getting so far from all of you in this conversation. Very good. The Ministry of AI and Game Development, we probably need to get in touch with Mr. Vaz. I'll send him a note as well about this. This is something he probably needs to look at because that's where an actual pivot could be. So I take that point, Tyrone, and move on to Dr. Campbell, then followed by Trevor in that order, and probably as well ask Sheldon as well to weigh in on this. But Dr. Campbell, the floor is here. Any views on these use cases, or are you concurring?
Well, these use cases, they're all out there in industry that we can really work with in academia. But in the end, business and IT needs alignment in order to gain optimal performance.
Yes.
Right, and that performance is what business seek for them to continue to be investing in IT. So what we have seen with these convergence of I go back to the three strategies that I spoke about at the beginning. I'm seeing where IT is now at the level of business in terms of decision making.
Yes.
And so it wasn't like in the past where IT was seen as a support to business, but if IT is now asking to be seen as one of the strategic leaders at the table, it must now have to defend itself in terms of if I'm going to ask for a spend to create opportunities for the organization in this environment, then I must be able to defend it. And I'm going to be critiqued in the same way business is being critiqued. So therefore, I must understand the language of business. I must speak the same way. I must be able to speak financially about the ratios, the performance targets, the key performance indicators, etc. They're going to be, and I'm going to be appraised the same way, right? So those are the kind of skills that we need in terms of our graduates, in terms of what we are researching into, to help our IT graduates learn how to work with the IT, the business professionals,
yes,
understand business in a way that we can see it not only in the traditional way in terms of those business models, but we can create virtual models that we can now apply new ways. We can dream up new ways of applying emerging technologies that we, as we see them, things that we have not even dreamt about yet, because in the next 3 to 4 years, we are going to see a lot of new components being hit in the market, because the basic technology.
Or way before that, or way before that, way before that.
When I say 3 years, I mean beginning today.
Yes.
Right, we're going to see a lot of new components, and then how are we going to combine all those components? So I listened to what Conrad and Gregory spoke about. You know, we continue to say we are so many years behind the developed society. But if we are going to be able to claim our position in the global market and to create products,
yes,
and services, we are going to have to move into that same realm,
yes,
and see our market not as Jamaica, but see our market as the world.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
And that's where our thought leaders have to move us.
Yeah, man, the thought leaders are necessary.
Yeah. They have to move us to see our market not being just the local market who cannot pay for these things, but to how do we now move beyond boundaries? How do we now move and collaborate with different partners across the world?
Globally, yes.
Globally, to get our products and our services.
How do
we get our skills up to those levels so that we can
Excellent
do it?
Point.
Excellent. So what it's really going to mean, it's going to mean that we can begin by taking leaders like Trevor and Sheldon to be a guest lecturers in our various courses, and then we find partners to bring live cases within the teaching and learning experience. And we also must go outside. There are many cases already available on the internet and various feeds within industry that are out there that we can access. Our academics must find them and bring them into the classroom.
Yes.
I spoke to you about integrated learning resources just the other day.
I need to push that, definitely.
And it may be that that's how we're going to have to do it, because the Jamaican students don't want to buy textbook, for example, and nobody wants to sell textbook to them anymore. So we're going to have to build all those resources and package it so that they get the experience and the learning, so that they can be upskilled. And we are going to have to grow these kind of thought leaders.
Thought leaders accordingly.
That are not afraid to ask these kind of questions.
Yes.
Right. That have these deep specialization in their respective fields. In this case today, we're talking about AI. Right.
Yes.
But we want people to understand that these thought leaders are not just C-levels. No, they come from anywhere in the organization. It's
anywhere. That's what I said.
They can be at the level of the cleaner.
Level of the cleaner.
Understand how to minimize germ spread in the organization, and how that translates to a more efficient and functioning organization.
You're right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Understood.
I remember when I went to Henry Renford before he died, and he gave us his artifacts. I was so motivated because it was part of the game development, the animation program that
that should have
and that was supposed that downstairs below where Mrs. Delisa sits, was created as the beginning of that, where we were going to digitize it. And when we digitize it, then these students out of the animation would now create animation products out of these things.
Right. So those, okay.
So they would be inspired to create products out of our own experiences.
Right.
So that's what I mean.
Monetize it accordingly, because we are now in a situation where this is becoming of high money value, which is what Greg pointed out earlier.
Right. So when you talk about these leadership issues, and you and I spoke about another thing, we're talking about even the computer society and its lack of funding. And I said to you, look here, the computer society needs to put itself in a position where it starts to write the content, where every employer, when they write for an IT job, is saying they must have a certification from the computer society. And so you have content writers who are writing, and everybody's writing.
I like the charge of the Jamaica Computer Society.
They are getting money.
Well note of that.
They are getting revenues from those places, right? Even the people, the electricians and so on, government needs to use the laws to make sure, say, look here, every electrician must be employed because houses must be re-inspected, such and such. So you have to show your certificate that your house gets inspected. You know, those are things you do to create opportunities.
All right.
So it's how we think. It's how we think.
It's how we think. It's how we think. Bottom line, it comes down to how we think. And that's why we're having a thought leadership forum. This is now called what? Caribbean Thought Leadership. It's not limited to the Jamaican experience, because anything that affects us here in Jamaica affects elsewhere. And this will be a live, it's an actual podcast that is going to be available to the public to comment on. So I really love that passion, Dr. Campbell. And as a former department head of the School of Computing, those thoughts were well articulated, and it demonstrates basically where we have been coming from as a UTech community in general. So I hope at this point, both Mr. Forrest and Mr. Paul probably get a sense of what is seen on the screen and where we are. And you guys are big industry players on almost every facet of the market. Where do you see, if you can, just in your own wisdom, tell us where artificial intelligence and game development stack up in terms of the sector, and just solving the kind of problems you think it should be solving for our people and this region? What's your take, your short take?
You're going first, Trevor, or you want me to take it first?
No, sure, you can go ahead.
Well, Dr. Thorpe, I must congratulate you for your continued work. I really encourage you to continue what you're doing.
Shalom, I think he might have chipped out a minute.
Can you hear me? Hello?
No, I'm hearing you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, that you're involved in the private sector as much as possible.
Yes.
I do believe that the university should be leading the charge when it comes to innovation. Yeah, research among same. Hold on 1 second. John, tell him, mommy, I'm on a phone call here. Please just tell that for me. Yeah, hello?
Yes, man, we're here. Go ahead.
Yes, because especially in times of COVID, when it comes to innovation research, you have to be generating sufficient capital and profits from revenues to be able to spend money on innovation and research. And right now, even before COVID, but even particularly under COVID, companies don't have that anymore. So we ourselves have been seeing how we can partner with the universities. So there's a win-win in that scenario. Now, when it comes to AI, one of the reasons why I have not really been involved in any true AI project to this day is for two reasons, and from a business perspective. One, the business case for it in Jamaica is not absolutely clear when you look at all the priorities the business may have. So when you speak to them about AI, it's something that they like the buzz around it. They're seeing where it can help them. But when you think about everything else, it's not in the forefront of most companies' mind. Two is in my own testing of certain projects locally, I'm not sure in a local context it's ready for prime time. Right. And primarily because the quality of our data has been questionable. We have not been too paying attention to that for many years. And if you just start to pay attention to it, there is very little true value the AI can give you in the immediate moment. And therefore, it has to be something where you have a horizon of maybe 3 to 5 years, of which you need to start now. That being said, I do believe, though, that working with the university, they will be able to provide the technical capabilities that is needed at a very reasonable cost to allow businesses to look to see how they can leverage and take advantage, and instead in terms of gaming and AI. So, for example, even if the gaming and AI particular business problem, and I must be educated, I'm not sure which ones you're probably seeking to solve, is not quite ready. But I believe it's good if there's a way in which different private companies can help to fund the university in building all these business cases further, that maybe in a year or two could actually start to take an agile approach and put something out there that will have some benefit. If we don't start taking that approach, I just think for many years we'll just continue to business just focus on what is immediately before them, and probably when AI is of really ready. I know, for example, to tell the truth, when I was at Jamaican for security, and I do understand why that works. End of the day, all of these endpoints and units, it has clean data, and it has the historical data to logs. So you can put an AI on it and be able to take what is a normal traffic pattern against abnormal traffic pattern. But when it comes to business data, sometimes you wouldn't even know that Trevor has an insurance product and a banking product with the same organization for whatever reason, because the IDs don't match or whatever, or the systems is two different systems. So there's a lot of play of problems, which in our case, I think
it's an opportunity as well.
Yes, it's an opportunity. The university needs to understand that and see where AI can help a problem like that. So yeah, so that's in my. So I will just. Very
good point. Very good point.
Do what you're doing, and I'm certainly wanting to do my part, and I'm sure the others out there in the private sector also feel the same way.
This is an excellent point. So the data. So the issue of the data that as we're speaking about, then colleagues, is not just fundamental to the fact that if the data is already clean, we can gain the insights that we would like to inform certain value-added solutions. But Sheldon came with a piece of it which is affecting him and his space, which is a true problem, is that sometimes the data itself needs to be cleaned up in many instances, because they are from various or disparate sources for which the necessary normalization and so on might still be missing from that data. In itself, that's an opportunity, but that's an opportunity just to clean up those data sets in the way that we can use them meaningfully. So I take very careful note of that point, and it's something we in the university will have to sit down and probably just quickly formulate a project around in terms of how we go there and engage some use cases on that. What Sheldon also said, and I think we have to try and follow up on it. It was said earlier, Sheldon, before you came. Conrad referred to it as the Alibaba of China. You have Alibaba in China who take on universities and say, come, let's work on these projects. But the man who run Alibaba, as you and I know, was he an English school teacher before he started? So he was quite pretty much affair with the fact that universities must be transformative. In Jamaica, we need the equivalent of the type of Alibaba philosophy that Conrad speaks of, with the deep pockets, or those in the diaspora with the pockets who will say, let us invest in our youth and our talent, and to ensure that we can have these transformations. But that might be a whole different podcast by itself. I will take Sheldon's point and move on to Trevor to hear his views on this very important conversation.
Good evening, everyone. Evening, Sean. Thank you for inviting me to participate. Let me first apologize for jumping on late. Actually working this morning. And,
well, I know we are operating after curfew, but the only thing the government cannot charge us for is doing this, yes? We can in fact engage, yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of limit my comments to AI.
To AI, yes.
And it's such an interesting question. And I kind of want to, piggyback on what we've just about data, right?
So you're sounding a little bit muffled, Trevor.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, a little better. Go ahead, yes.
Right. So I kind of wanted to focus on the data discussion.
Yes.
Because one of the things I've seen over time is Jamaica, we're not really a data-driven country, right? And the common term where data rich but information poor, applies to us very well. Because we simply don't appreciate the value of data itself. Right? We have so much information. You just look at the government alone, the amount of data that exists in the government is unreal. But what we do with it is sad.
Right.
And I think, when you look at more data has been 90% of the world's data has been produced in the last 2 to 3 years.
Yes, especially with the Internet of Things being around.
All the data created. That says something.
Yes.
We're talking over 4,000 gigabytes of data in the next 5 years. Next 3 years. So a lot of data is being generated, right? And one of the things that we have not fully come to appreciate the value of the data. And I think one of the reasons for that is we haven't yet seen in a useful or visual or entertaining way what value and what information you can derive from this data. Partially because there's only so much the human brain can
process. Yes.
But when you start to look at the sheer processing power of computers over the years and where it's going with quantum computing and so on, one of the things that I think we seriously need to look at is one, thinking about the fact that the country, national level, and all the way down to a business level, national level in the form of looking at our capabilities and our role in a global marketplace has to be driven by analysis and assessment of data, right? How businesses, gain a competitive edge based on how they look at and how they treat with data, right? How universities create and innovate, fantastic things keeping data. Now, appreciating the fact that the human brain can only do so much. Artificial intelligence and machine learning now present the opportunity to to
harness that process.
Look
yes.
at the information.
Yes.
Pull out a whole bunch of outcomes and be able to now see things that you could never have seen before. Not only can you do that, but the speed at which you can do that with AI learning and machine learning engines is phenomenal. And what that means is that things that would have taken a lot longer to do,
yes,
right? They suddenly now become hyper efficient.
Yes.
What does that do for you? Well, now when we're sitting down and making certain decisions about today and the future, let us talk about, solving crime, some bugbears at a national level,
yes,
solving crime,
yes,
issues about healthcare. COVID is high on the list. When we talk about, businesses, in the financial sector, the insurance sector, all of these areas where they're doing a whole lot of number crunching and analysis of data in order to come up with products, make decisions. None of this now can happen in a traditional, right?
Can happen now when?
In a traditional way.
That's correct.
Because if you're doing it in the traditional way, you're already years behind.
Right.
Because something that traditionally would take you months to do is happening now in seconds.
And hence it becomes an opportunity. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And hence we need to now realize that there is a significant opportunity at all levels, going from national all the way down to business and people.
Right.
Talk about using and taking advantage of artificial intelligence. Now, there are pros and cons of this, because one of the spin-offs of artificial intelligence is, because of what it does, it can easily be thought to replace the human being. This was a big issue brought up within the BPO sector, where it was said that artificial intelligence was fast removing the lower level BPO operational tasks.
Right. Right.
So in adopting and considering artificial intelligence, what we now have to start to consider as well, hand in hand, is upskilling of our people, because when those things that AI
So on that point then, Trevor, on that point, I'd love to cut you, because you're segueing to where we're heading next, and you have made the point very clear, well elucidated to measure the fact that AI and the merit of its contribution is very needed. In other words, the preparedness level now is where we have to understand the conversation. So the final subtopic, which I'm going to merge into two, just the interest of managing time, is to now look at the talent pipeline to drive that very point you just raised. And once we understand the talent pipeline, everything relating to the patents and the intellectual property and the research and the type of public-private partnerships that we should have, which you and Sheldon sort of came in and tying as well to the conversation. I would like us all now, and because I think about 9 of us on this session still, a very important take-home point, and I think we might have to have a second podcast session to this one, because there's so many things that we have started to identify. But given where we have actually taken the conversation this evening, from arguing that AI and game development does create value for the sector, to the point that institutions like a University of Technology is introducing new applied degrees in these areas and short credential course stacking, moving the conversation to a point where we're saying business problems. There are several myriad of business problems that AI and game development are solving pre-pandemic, and now more so in a pandemic, and likely to still be happening post-pandemic. We have argued so far that, listen, all the content of use cases for which AI and game development is required. There's so much that it is easy to pinpoint that living in a world where everything is driven by data, every single sector in our society will be impacted or has been impacted. To the point, I think that Conrad said, set up a ministry of AI and game development. That's what he said at the early point of the conversation. And now, hearing the views relating to, well, it's not just limited to the data that we collect that will give us the insights to support AI and the game development initiatives, but we must also pay attention to the quality of the data that we have to deal with here in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Very useful conversation, very riveting conversation that I'd like the public to weigh in on, to leave a comment on our corresponding podcast post and to sort of share where next you think we should be pushing the conversation. But no, we're at the final points of this evening's seminar, and we're really looking at talent pipeline. And please, ladies and gentlemen, there's one lady left in the session, but she hasn't spoken yet really. But the pipeline, I think, is critical. The talent pipeline is critical to supporting us building out the research, the patents, the IP, and the type of public-private partnerships. Let me start back with Conrad from the beginning here now. Where you see all of this, Conrad, because your company is one of those who say, well, boy, listen, all of us should be finding the talent pipeline to support the initiative. But give me your take in 2021, May 2nd. That's where we are. Where do you see this talent pipeline, patent development, IP research, and public partner relationships in creating the value that you think that is needed?
Well, I would start off with the pipeline, basic terms. I don't think the students are coming out fit for purpose in all areas. I think there are some business areas that are that we are oversaturated in. Yes. While there are some basic areas that I would say for the future is something that I found out to be short. So let me use an example. If you're looking at the data,
go ahead.
If you're looking at the data infrastructure, how many students come out now can do machine learning? Yes. Basic, anything in those basic terms.
Neural networks,
Python,
network
Pythons designs, Pythons and using R and those
using
basic
Python
things
and R to build out the models.
To build out the models, right? And then I have, in my experience, find ones that can do that, but then they can't analyze it. Mm-hmm. So they weren't developed for analytical skills. They were trained to do database in data enterprise, I think the course is called at UTech. But when you finish that course, you can't get them to analyze because the course didn't teach them analysis. The course maybe, I'm not specifying that specific course, but just to give you an analysis. So what is happening?
It looks at tools. Some of the courses look at tools.
Tools, right, and not a fit for purpose, which is saying, if you're coming out of this world, this is I would call it the data continuum, right? So there's the first part, which is maybe databasing, and there's an next part that is building up the data infrastructure, and then there's an next part analyzing the data infrastructure, and then the fourth component is maybe the AI now to make the data more efficient, meaning to spit out this data more efficiently, right? Yes. And you look at even as points about visualization of that same information to make a common man that data can become frustrating for a group of people. So you might get another part about visualizing that data. Yeah, so when you look now, right. So what we are not producing, we're not looking at it as a continuum like that. So when you get a student from UTech or from UE, you still have to go get 50, 30, or 100 courses from across the world over the next 6 months to get them ready. And then you make this large investment in them, but they are still not ready for purpose. So again, just like many courses in the past, I'm sure they were like this and they have to get to that point. it is for us to sit down as the university and the corporate and sit down and say, okay, what is this continuum that needs to look at in terms of app development? What is the continuum that we need to be developing for data, for AI?
Excellent
and
point.
how these all connect together, and then come to a conversation to say, is the university preparing internships, partnerships locally and overseas to get these students ready for when a company like Innovate 10X that always looking at next level kind of solutions, things, they might be able to visualize these solutions, and visualize these ways of fixing Jamaican companies based on Sheldon's vast experience.
Yes.
However, would he be able to say, I can find a developer at that level, at that level, coming out of the university?
Major problems, yes.
Right. So as a result, you end up, even though you see business opportunity, you can't take advantage of market opportunity.
You cannot touch the business opportunity. Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you can't touch it because you're now you're scrambling now to go to the same partners, companies that is causing the problem in the market from India and from stuff like that, same way. So you're just a facilitator of the same problem, if you understand some point. So what you have to be doing now.
Devil's advocate then, based on that point, are you saying that the academic staff need to be retooled as a part of transitively impacting the student outcome?
Right, that's without question.
That's the white elephant in the room. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yes. Right. That is like the clearest way to put it, is to say you build people who have the experience. Even small entities as myself would need a group of people, some more experience like a Sheldon, myself, who is young and upcoming, that is maybe getting one and two insights based on work that I am doing. And then the persons, as Michael Leachin said last week, every good company need a professor on their board. And I laughed. I never expected him to say that. I said every great Jamaican company must have a professor on their board, because the business, the educational insight they can give that company about what is going on in the educational space. But on the flip side, every school course should have a business person on it. That the balance can happen where they are seeing what is happening, what's the need of the market, and not what's the need of the academia. Oh, well, we just need to make sure that these students are aware of AI, while the market is saying we need to activate AI immediately. So there's a different level of demand. So I think the conversation needs to be that two sides of the coin need to meet in the center. Business companies need to hear what's going on in the school world, and the school world of any form or institution that it forms should be partnering and having committees with corporate entities so that they can both learn, so that the pipeline can become better.
Can be connected.
That's my point.
I start that series tomorrow. I'll invite, I sent you an invite to one of them already, but I have some more. I'll have to send them out to you. Excellent point. Excellent point. Trevor, I'm coming to you. You want to go up next, or you want to take it from Colonel? All right, go ahead in that order. Go ahead, Trevor. I saw the hand raised. Go ahead.
Well, no, I just wanted to just underscore and piggyback on what is being said now, because Sean, you and I have had this particular discussion many times.
Yes.
As it relates to the role that academia has to play in preparing students, which it is not doing a very stellar job at now.
And this by no way,
in preparing students,
an indictment against UTech or UTech staff or anyone. You're saying generally the academia.
Yes, generally.
Yes.
Yeah, generally. Because in business, I mean, look, my business, when we started, and even to this day, the core of my development assets are in India. And it's because there was a deficiency both in the type of resource I needed and the mindset of that resource. Now, the challenge, and this challenge is faced by many businesses, because when the students come out, they're not prepared. And I think it is really an issue where universities or academic institutions have not sought to properly align and position themselves to align quickly with industry needs.
Yes.
Right. You cannot, and I'm being very frank, you cannot have instruction for students solely coming from somebody who has never participated in industry.
Yes.
Right. So there's the value that can be derived from somebody.
I want you to say that again. You know, I think that deserves saying again. Say it one more time.
No, the instruction cannot solely come from someone who has no or has never participated in industry.
Okay, well said. Yes,
right?
Yes.
Because you know, people like Sheldon, people like myself, you know, and a whole bunch of other industry practitioners, the experience we get never come out in a book, right? And a lot of it never come out of the classroom.
Yes.
Right, but it is the people in the classroom that would need to benefit from this stuff. And you know, what they could learn in an hour took some of us, you know, 5-10 years to learn.
Yes.
And we keep learning.
Yes.
But I continue to say that I do not believe that our academic institutions have properly positioned themselves because you see, here's the thing, and I was having this discussion with a colleague, and I'll wrap it up on this. I was having this discussion with a colleague last week about the same issue, and I said, look, you know, he asked, what do you think is the challenge? Why is it that the academic institutions are not pushing out the people? And I said, well, it is because academia has not gone to industry to find out what industry's needs are, because it is almost as if academia doesn't feel that they should do that. Industry should come to them. And I do not think that is the right approach. It has to be a more symbiotic relationship. But academia's aloofness has prevented them from going to industry and saying, yo, what you need? You can't sit down on a university campus and dictate what industry needs, because industry's needs are changing faster than what you're teaching.
Yes.
So you have to go out there and you have to find out what industry needs. And if you're not, you know, teaching it, you need to be able to, as you said, pivot quickly. And in some cases, use industry needs to drive funding.
Yes.
Because if it is,
it needs to drive the funding. Yes.
Yeah, because if it is that industry needs this stuff, industry itself may fund you, because it may very well cost industry less to fund you than it costs them to train the people that you're sending to them. Right? So that's something that I think is very important. Academia and industry, the relationship between the two needs some reworking, because I don't think that you know, we're realizing the benefits of the talent that is in there, nor are we properly equipping the talent that is coming out. So when you talk about that talent pipeline, look, we have started at my company now.
The hands are going up. It's a hot potato.
Yeah, man. We've started blockchain as a service, right?
Yes.
In my company. But Sean, I cannot find blockchain developers in Jamaica.
Yes.
Right? I can't do it here because and it is a challenge because no university is training individuals
en masse,
right, to do that. So I think it's a serious discussion that needs to be had.
It is a very serious. As a matter of fact, I'm singling it out to be a follow-up discussion by itself. I want to take the other arguments on the floor. I see Tyrone, I see Greg's hand up in that order. And Sheldon, I agree with you. We will definitely need to finish the needs analysis. So Tyrone, but let me hear your take on this for the talent pipeline. So Trevor goes to India. You heard that? That's a very telling one.
Yes, I am listening keenly.
Yes.
And I have to agree with what is being said.
Yes.
And being in the academic space and being in the academic space overseen by an administration that seeks to use procedures that stifle the ability to respond quickly. Here, we need the support. So it's not that academia will not go to business, but when we attempt to go to business and we come forward with courses to say, here, we see a need coming out of business to provide this type of training opportunity, you are meeting on a brick wall. So, and this is coming out of the experience of pushing forward with the applied artificial intelligence and the game design and development course of studies, where we have been facing a lot of roadblocks and hurdles to get it to the point where it is accepted and we're being given approval that yes, we are on our way to getting these courses of study available to the different stakeholders.
Excellent.
So I am listening, and I feel like some caged animal that has a lot of fervor, right? You want to burst like a tornado, but they have something that is just holding you back.
Well, Tyrone, I see it as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity. So what you're speaking about is the lack of nimbleness of the university infrastructure to adapt to change. But I think there are some other fundamental things in the whole process that I would argue that as individuals and as academics, even this topic of AI and game development, because there are some things I would want to say what the characteristics of the talent pipeline should include. And I think many of us probably know what could go into it to start helping private sector companies like Conrad and so on. It's just probably the will to do it. It might mean that we need to create immediately a cyber or data analytics private company on the campus like a SAPN or otherwise to be able to respond quickly to training the needs of the sector. So we're offering the degrees now, but at the same time, we can do small and nimble things that can respond to the needs of the private sector. And those are the things I'm starting this week ahead in a set of sessions, starting there.
And Professor Thorpe, that is what SAPNA has been. It has been that pulse, that finger and the pulse of industry that has been able to provide some sort of benefit to the industry, so they know that, oh, UTech is not dead. It is giving us something that we need. But now industry is saying, we want more of this.
Yes.
And I'm sure that Dr. Campbell and yourself can envision
that. Understood.
Being a school unto itself.
Yes, definitely so. So, all right, Doctor, I say, okay, Greg is up next. Conrad, I observe that you say you'll have to leave shortly, and I really want to thank you for coming. Although I know we don't even get into the discussion of the patent and the IP, but I do know if you get the right talent, we can be talking about the patent and the IP and to look at projects and so on. So I want to thank you for coming, and as we go through the remainder of the discussion, we can follow through with other persons. And we'll be following up, Conrad, on these initiatives that we discussed today, and I will definitely have your company and company logo probably endorse this podcast event as we put this out to the public in short order. So thank you very much, sir, for a very enlightened contribution to this conversation, and do appreciate you having a good evening. So Greg, at this point, over to you. Please weigh in at this point in terms of the talent pipeline, because the game,
certainly, Dr.
game on esports is a big thing to the talent pipeline have to be right too. Yes.
Well, I mean, I would have to jump off shortly.
Yes.
But what I am seeing, and I'm hearing a lot of discussion in terms of private entities such as myself, Conrad Sheldon, and Mr. Forrest, But I mean, a strategy that is used in Israel from a military perspective is that there's some mandatory rules in terms of persons. Once they reach a certain age, they should be a part of the military somehow, some way, for a period of time, get that military experience and then move on. I believe that our country, just from the issues that Jamaica has, there really should be some kind of um, exchange between the government itself, the public sector, I should say, really should look at an exchange, a thought process exchange, a skill exchange where Jamaica has problems to solve from the governmental perspective. And not that I'm saying we shouldn't really go through the procurement processes and get private sector entities to jump in and solve some of the government's problems. But I believe if that funding goes directly to the university and say, okay, we have a problem of crime, we have a problem of, you know, infrastructure, we have a problem, you know, so much issues that we have for the country itself that the government has to take on, and there's so much outsourcing, especially to India, because we know that the government outsources to India. Take some of that funding or money that you would send across to pay Indian developers, not knocking the talent, because you know we have to make those decisions because we need it. Take some of that funding and send it to the schools, send it to the institutions to say, you solve some of these government the issues we have from, you know, for the government, and we send the funding towards the schools to develop the talent. So everybody know, coming out of a specific program, whether it's game development, AI, you know, developing the blockchain, whatever it is, you have to work on a project for the government to solve a problem before you graduate. And then through that, you get the experience, you get the development time, you get the creative time, and then you move on from there. After you graduate, you'll be a more rounded student, but you're leaving with a certificate through, you know, completing the tasks that are in the books and etc. etc. And we still have issues that are yet to be solved, and these are now being outsourced to other countries to solve them. So I think there should be some discussion. You are very close with several persons. Get JAMPRO in the conversation, get IDB in the conversation, get government stakeholders in the conversation, have a discussion with the institutions and say, you know, we're going to be directing the funds to the schools, X amount of whatever the funding is, and the exchanges, you solve these are the problems we have to solve. You know what I mean? And that way it will help to bring out more rounded students, because unfortunately it's a problem that we all face. I'm speaking to a team from Iran to help with some of my development issues, because I went through so much interviews and I couldn't find persons with the skill sets. I know a team from Iran is going to have a team from Iran. Exactly. Oh, sorry, what is that team from Iran doing? They're helping me with the platform that I have. Oh, that's a virtual events platform? A virtual events platform. Okay. Building out. So this is it's a very good session we're having here. There's a lot of learning going on, man. You know, so it is an issue that we all face, and I would love to come to and say, Dr. Tharp, I need 4 or 5 or 6. You need 30, 40. Send them over. Send them over. You know what I mean? Well, Dr. Jeremy, right, to hear this beside us. I have to go worldwide to get them, you know. So no, it's a very useful point you make. Very useful point. So okay, I take that, and I take Trevor's point earlier. Trevor is going to India, you're in Iran. So this is a learning point about where we need to upskill the sector in a meaningful way. Dr. Campbell, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Excellent points.
All right, excellent points being raised. I want to respond to Tyrone first. Again, I go back to that point. Jamaica is Jamaica, and it will always be that way. In all my how many score years of being in Jamaica, we have always we like to create bureaucracies, and we don't seem to address our problems. How I do things. I want to build a house. There's an old structure there that is preventing me from building it. I tear it down and I build a new structure. those are some of the things that we tried in the School of Computing. We can do it again. So, irrespective of who is in administration, once you can show the performance, build the course, build the prototype, get the funding for it, show it, nobody in that university will be able to deny you. I'm telling you, I've done it before, and it can be done. And the same people are still in position that I used to work through. So, and they haven't changed. So that can be done. So that's not a problem. People go where funding is, right? So losers will go, and funding will follow the funding. The next thing I want to address is the matter of talent. And it's something that we have been talking about. As a country, we have a math problem.
Yeah.
Everybody, we keep going.
Back down to that.
We keep going to India, Iran, North Korea, wherever, you name it, that we want to go to for the talent. What have they done? They have invested in their STEM. They have invested in mathematics. That's it. And that's where it comes from. Everything that they are doing now while they are leading. And that's why they are so attractive to us. So we have to see the pain points, and we're going to have to bear that pain for ourselves. We have to invest in it. If we continue to just find the easy way out.
Well, the government spoke about STEM schools before, you know. I know the Prime Minister's solution to it would have been, he suggested STEM schools.
In 2009, when I was in my first term, when I met with when the PM was the Minister of Education, I went to a meeting with him, and I mentioned that whole idea of the coding school, because then we were starting to talk about SAPNA and those issues and what we needed to see happening, and how we would target, mathematics as a foundation, and the science-based courses as a foundation to build up this kind of talent pool. If we were invested in those from, 10 years ago, we would have been much further along today, because some of those first set of people would be hitting our universities today. Okay? So we have to start. We have to begin.
Well, we have to start. I was about to say that.
So what can we do at the university? And that's why I was saying to you that we need to, if we can't get the maths department or maths school to work with us.
We in computing have to start it. We in computing have to do it.
Exactly. We're gonna have to do that. We're gonna have to literally target. So
we're already there. We are already there, Dr. Campbell. We are already there. We are already there. So I fully endorse what you're saying. We're already there.
But we cannot do it alone. So persons like Trevor, Sheldon, and all those other persons that have an interest in their long-term sustainability of their organization.
All right.
And if they believe that Jamaica have talent, if they really believe Jamaica have talent that they want to develop, or is it that they believe that going to train them a few years and they're going to migrate and gone? So therefore, the skill, and I always talk about these skills being, what was the word we always use, Sean?
The brain drain?
No, the replaceable skill.
Yes,
disposable
assets. Right. Some companies, yes.
So we're always talking about disposable assets. Disposable assets. So if you're looking at it as disposable assets, then continue to do it the way. Find wherever in the world it is, and eventually Jamaica will catch on and realize it cannot survive unless it joins the game.
Yeah. Well, it's a valid point, but the universities also run the risk that if they don't pivot to, their survivals can be also hampered, just like the companies. So both of us have an equal stake.
I also say to you again,
yes,
they must also look that its student population is going to have to be drawn from the world. And that's why it cannot be just the face-to-face that it is looking towards.
Yes, a global talent pool. All right, it's a very valuable point of the conversation. Sheldon, I acknowledge that you have your hand up. If Arnett is finished with that point, I will concede.
I'm basically finished with that.
Excellent point. It's an excellent point. It's excellent reference to Acton, and I'll tell you the action plan immediately at the end of this with everyone. So Sheldon, the floor is yours.
Yes, Dr. Saab. I think we're all on the same page, which is a very good thing. We just need to make sure we action in, what we're agreeing to. Yes. But in many cases, we're actually doing so, but not at the magnitude in which we need to.
Make the difference.
I'm gonna give you an example because I do hire a lot of interns. I try my best to, and the hackathons and all those things just to try to see where the talent is in Jamaica. And there's somebody that commented to me just recently. I'm going to tell you whether it's UTech or you student came from, but he said to me, and he's been with me since January this year, said 1 week of working at 10X, him learned more than the 3 years he's been at university. And I know he was exaggerating, but I asked him, to kind of explain. And then I have other students who's at UTech now and UE explaining that he understands what the guy is saying. Because it's one thing trying to develop a mobile app for a class, and another thing, develop a mobile app to give to a company which are going to use it. You understand? And all what goes involved, with setting up the AWS, we're paying attention to the security of the application. We're paying attention to the performance of the application. We're meeting with the customer and getting the feedback of what is working, not working, all that. So, I do take the point. I think every degree out of UTech should be paired with some kind of a real practical experience.
Yes.
Because the students themselves, when they're exposed to the company, realizing that they're missing out on a lot. Right? So that is one. I just want to give you that example. There's another student that I'm working with that tell me that boy is studying cybersecurity forensics. And I tell her that, boy, I'm interested in cybersecurity and we do work in that area, but I can't speak to the forensics at this time. But she said that is what she's studying now. That's what her degree is. And I thought to myself, didn't want to share it to her. Wouldn't it be better that she have a more broad-based cybersecurity degree, and then maybe she do some more mathematical courses or something like that, that they would allow her to be able to have critical thinking, so that maybe she could take a 2 months or 3 month certificate course in cybersecurity forensic, as opposed to specializing so easily. In other words, she comes out, yes. She doesn't have business analyst skills. She can't sit down with a client and make a proper problem statement, right? Okay. She don't have the skills when it comes to hardening a server or a mobile application, or cyber skills that are are in demand right now. What she's telling me, if there's an incident, she is very deep into doing that kind of forensic about it. And I think that is where now we need to have that partnership between the academic and business, and so where should the focus should be? What are we really wanting to get out of the universities at this point in time? Because these same students, when they graduate with these specialized skills, yes, with your Trevor Forrest says he's waiting on some blockchain developers. Maybe there's a need to have that there, or there is a course that needs to be the course that needs to be designed.
Yes.
That can encourage students to take
note of that. Take note.
Yeah, as a part of their degree, or even outside of their degree, because we don't necessarily have to solve it from necessarily introducing it in the degree itself. Right? But we just need to continue this dialogue and make sure we action some of the things.
Definitely so. Definitely so. Some of the concerns raised here, and this is an excellent point that Sheldon has raised, and it's all a matter of the alignment between the academic institutions and the private sector, as well as government entities, not just limited to that, as it relates to this argument. But in wrapping up in a minute, thank you very much, Gregory, for coming. Really enjoyed your input, and we need to brand represent your company as a part of our podcast as we put this out in short order. What I want to say to us, the talent pipeline for any type of degrees that the university seeks to produce has to make sure it matches the skill sets of the market and not just highly theoretical pointers only. You know, the theory is important. So for example, the talent pipeline needed for people in AI and game development will have some general skill sets as well as some very specific skill sets. So for example, somebody who is in AI, these days they refer to them as AI data scientists, and the skill sets come with sophistication of mathematics and statistical modeling that some of these skills don't necessarily exist only within computing. They may be people in the area of math or in the area of social sciences and other subdisciplines to meet the needs of the market based on the kind of problem that needs to be solved. So for example, things like probabilistic modeling of systems, knowing various algorithms and how they work, being able to test the algorithms. And before you actually apply the algorithms and the models to problems, you have to understand the problem first before you go and apply it. You know, so there are some skill sets agreeably that the degrees should provide, and I'm going to concur that short courses which bring both academic and industry together, like what I'm going to be doing this summer, will be a perfect opportunity to sort of flesh out the things that we are sharing in this this podcast here this evening. Actually, I have put together a stack of short courses. I'm talking about like half-day type sessions to start, which speaks to some of the AI and the data analytics and the game development type initiatives. And so there can be a transparency between private and public sector entities to say, well, these are the skills we need to be working on. These are the topic areas that we want to be working on. And that starts this week, May 2nd, it starts. So I'll be sending out those formal invitations for attending where you can, and to have them available and up and running on YouTube, on my OBS, so that people can see, and then to have more staff and private sector individuals be a part of that training cadre to do their little sessions online, so we can get more people involved. I'm reusing this vehicle to say, well, let's create an avenue to allow both private sector companies, public sector companies, as well as ourselves in the academia to run short sprint of courses to build out some of the skill sets. The AI, the game development, the blockchain development, all the associated areas that may be new in some regards. And it might be taking a longer time for the universities in particular to be making the adjustment, the timely adjustments that will produce the outcomes that you want in the shortest turnaround. So these are some things. And then from the talent pipeline, we're going to be looking at sessions on patent and IP and general research tied to certain areas. So for the AI and the data scientists, the game development, and in particular these two, we'll be running some sessions on just patent, IP, and research as research sessions only. That will allow us to do a more granular assessment of how we bring the two skills together. And that will include students, it will include academic staff, and it will include, very importantly, private sector, public sector, company involvement, local and in the diaspora, for us to address this monster of a problem, but it might not be such of a monster if we look at the glass half full as opposed to it being half empty. So we have our people, we have people. It's just that they need to be engaged more, and we have the knowledge. That's the next thing. We have the knowledge about the very areas for which we are trying to build the talent pipeline, but it's a matter of the engagement, all right? And that's what we have to do deliberately. It'd be great if Trevor, for example, can say, well, he has 5 blockchain developers locally. I can tell you in Jamaica, there are some blockchain developers, but guess what? They are being paid in Bitcoins, working for Canadian companies. and they come, and they are UTech grads, for example, they come to my office in slippers in the days, making 60, 65, 75, 85,000 US per year. And this has been from about 2017, for example. So we do have some young talents. We have those who are in the AI and the data science, but we might have them in smaller numbers, and they are working for the highest paying bidder. What we don't want is really a case of when we build a talent pipeline, we turn them into this mass market and we underpay them because they are going to tell you that they don't want peanuts and they're trying to build careers. But at the same time, we find a way to sustain it by paying them and by ensuring that they actually have value for money in their careers. And you at the same time as companies be able to get that value added to your outcome. So this is really a very complex conversation with so many different facets to it that it don't seem like we can finish it in one podcast. But it's a very good podcast we've been having here so far. But I still see two hands on the floor. I don't know if they're from before, but I will still acknowledge them because I see them. Sheldon, I see the hand up and then followed by Trevor in that order.
No, Dr. Thompson, good. I should have lowered my hand. Sorry.
Hand. Okay, all right. Sorry, okay. Trevor, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, Sean, I just wanted to kind of conclude because I had to jump off.
Yes,
so I just wanted
to close out the session in a moment here. Yes, good.
I just wanted to thank you guys for inviting me to participate. Looking for, I mean, we will definitely have our continued discussions, Sean.
Yes.
So because this year I have some, I'm giving it another try with keeping the money at home.
Yes, domestic income. Yes.
So I thank you and thank everybody for indulging and providing valuable feedback and so on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We have to have the conversation because if we don't talk, we don't know what is going on and we don't know how to engage. So I really appreciate even spending an hour or two, it has been, out of your Sunday evening to just engage on an important topic.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I'll talk to you. We'll talk.
So is Trevor still on the
He's about to leave. He's about to leave because he said he has to run.
Well, no, the board, no, not on the board. Not on the board anymore.
Yes, the board. Yes, he's.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Trevor, for your services. I didn't get a chance to thank you. You came on while I was leading the school.
Yes, the department. Sure.
Yes. Yeah, man. Yes, we.
All right.
We put forward our efforts and services and
as best as you could. Yes.
Yeah, man. Definitely. All right, guys. Take care.
Okay,
welcome. You're welcome. So thank you so far, colleagues, for really making this being a very informative podcast. I find that the conversations have been riveting, some very useful points. In summing up, what I wanted to say is that, well, listen, if we can build the skill sets in AI and game development, we are seeing clearly from the presentations this afternoon is that there is a demand. There's in fact a very strong demand. If you have to be going to Iran and you have to be going to India still, it means that there's a gap in the market that we do have to fill, right, where this is concerned. In terms of value creation, the arguments are clear that the value creation and the need to find strategies to engage and to pivot is where both universities as well as private public sector companies need to be deliberately engaged in moving the agenda. I see some very interesting things that could be possible. I would argue that we are now in the time of the orange economy. And the orange economy means that, listen, every youngster leaving school these days is a creative. And those who are seeking to survive mid-career and otherwise need to also be creative. You're in the middle of the orange economy. The pandemic is showing us some very telling signs. I can't see a cinema opening anywhere. I can't see a regular movie house anymore opening up. Most of those are closing down. Okay, so how do we pivot? the AI and the game development skill set could easily allow us to transition into a Jamaica Caribbean Netflix of our own. So there's Netflix as we know it, but there's the opportunity to pivot in a serious way where the skill sets in animation, game development, esports can come together to ilk out that ecosystem for which the talent pipeline could be working. And that's just one example. We think about, Caribbean, digital manufacture, Jamaica building out this manufacture. I'm seeing things in 3D houses now being printed and modeled and printed and being developed. Real estate development through digital manufacture, that might be an opportunity that we don't even properly put pen to paper yet, but the imagination, right, is more important than knowledge. We learned that from the great Albert Einstein. It is a time where we must now pivot to use our imaginations and to leverage the new skill sets in the space of AI and game development to drive the sector. Tourism is actually very challenged at this time. One presenter made that point clear earlier today that, he's getting a lot of projects. I think it was Greg, with a lot of projects with events and the heritage sites. Dr. Campbell alluded to the fact that we have so much heritage artifacts. I would contend that digital tourism is a potential space, new space that may be earning significant income going forward. University could be looking at this as a space. We in the computing school should really be looking at how we can lend support to that conversation through game development and animation, character designs to drive that outcome. Then there's a whole space of online education that is clear. The AI-assisted learning, for the classroom has taken off leaps and bounds, especially since this pandemic, and it might be staying that way for a while. I don't think the list here, and there's esports as it is, physical sports have become abated. Digital sports is becoming more common. I'm seeing where esports association, Jamaica Esports Association, led by Greg Moore and his team, for example, are now building out contractual arrangements with the Jamaica Olympic Association, and even I think the Jamaica Football Federation. All these entities are now looking to probably digital sports. The skill sets and the talent pipeline to drive those outcomes formulate themselves from AI and game development. So this has been a very, very interesting Caribbean thought leadership conversation. And we're coming to you live from Kingston, Jamaica. So I want you to leave your comments at the bottom of this session, this post. We'll get back to you accordingly. I'm Sean Thorpe, your host, and I would like to thank all very well knowledgeable guests here, well established guests to sort of take the ball and doing a very good job in sharing with you today. So have a good evening. Thank you. And we'll be keeping in touch in short order. Leave a post at the end of this session for me. And you can reach me at stop@utech.edu.jm. Have a wonderful evening. So Campbell, we need to talk offline. Thank you very much, Tyrone, you're still here. Thank you very much, Sheldon. Thank you very much, Miss Leslie. And thank you very much for all those who were here earlier. Have a wonderful evening. So this is going to be available shortly in the evening to the general public, just to get the listening and to start getting the comments and feedback. Is there any other comments before we close, just to be clear?